I spend much of my time working with people in therapy, and a large part of my experience has involved individuals who have an avoidant attachment style. Across the years, I have met people from many different backgrounds, personalities, and walks of life. Every story is different, every journey is personal, yet certain emotional patterns continue to appear again and again. No two people are exactly alike, but the deeper emotional struggles behind avoidance often share remarkable similarities. Therapy gives me the opportunity to see far beyond the first impression someone brings into the room. The person who sits across from me during the first session is rarely the same person I come to understand after months of honest conversations. Little by little, I begin to see how their experiences shape their romantic relationships, family connections, friendships, careers, and the quiet emotional battles they carry every single day. While I never reveal private information and always protect confidentiality, relationship struggles remain one of the most common topics because they influence almost every area of an avoidant person's life. What happens inside a relationship often reflects what has been happening inside that person for years, and that is where the real story usually begins. Stay with me because one important detail later may completely change the way you understand avoidant attachment. Many people miss it, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is another part of my work that people rarely hear about. Much of my professional experience also involves helping individuals who struggle with anger and personality-related challenges. Because of that, many of the people I meet are carrying several emotional difficulties at the same time, rather than dealing with just one issue. Over the years, I have noticed something that appears often enough to deserve attention. A significant number of clients who struggle with anger also show signs of avoidant attachment, whether those patterns are fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant. This does not mean every avoidant person has anger issues. That would be an unfair conclusion. But the overlap is common enough that it cannot simply be ignored. For many people, vulnerable emotions were never welcomed while growing up. They learned that showing sadness, fear, disappointment, or emotional pain was risky, uncomfortable, or even unsafe. Those feelings did not disappear. They simply became hidden beneath the surface. As time passed, those buried emotions often transformed into irritation, defensiveness, or anger, because those emotions felt easier to express than vulnerability. I tend to notice this pattern more frequently among avoidant men, although it can absolutely happen with women as well. Keep watching because the next part explains why this emotional shift changes the way avoidant people experience love. One of the biggest questions people ask is surprisingly simple. How can you tell when an avoidant person has formed a real emotional bond with someone? Another way to ask the same question is this: who actually becomes important enough to reach an avoidant person's inner emotional world? The answer matters because avoidant individuals usually do not build deep emotional attachments quickly. They are extremely careful about who they trust. They rarely allow people past the walls they have spent years building. Those walls are not always created because they do not care. Very often they exist because caring has felt dangerous before. Many avoidant people have learned to protect themselves long before they learned how to fully connect with others. That protective habit becomes automatic. They may enjoy someone's company, appreciate the relationship, or even feel strong attraction while still keeping part of themselves hidden. Real emotional closeness develops much more slowly than most people expect. It is not driven by excitement alone. It grows through repeated experiences of emotional safety, consistency, patience, and trust. And that process often takes much longer than it does for people with a more secure attachment style. What happens next surprises almost everyone, so make sure you stay until the end because the signs of genuine attachment are often very different from what most people expect. When an avoidant person finally forms a real emotional bond, it often reflects a level of commitment that is much deeper than most people ever notice. They usually do not give their heart away quickly or easily. Emotional investment is something they take seriously, and they rarely offer it without careful thought. Once they truly become attached, they are much less likely to leave unless something significant damages the relationship. Their commitment is not built on excitement, intense chemistry, or temporary emotions. It grows from feeling emotionally safe, understood, and accepted. That is why recognizing these signs is so important. One of the clearest signs appears when they feel comfortable with someone who accepts differences without turning every disagreement into a fight. Imagine hearing the words, "We don't have to agree on everything, and that's perfectly okay." For an avoidant person, that kind of response creates emotional relief. Instead of feeling forced to defend every opinion or prove themselves, they experience acceptance even when viewpoints are different. The relationship feels bigger than the disagreement. That quiet sense of safety lowers emotional pressure and makes honest conversations much easier. Since many avoidant individuals naturally struggle with ongoing conflict, this type of calm environment allows them to open up without constantly worrying about rejection or criticism. Surprisingly, once they feel accepted exactly as they are, they often become much more willing to compromise because changing their perspective no longer feels like losing themselves or giving up the respect of the person they care about. Stay with me, because the next reason is one that many people completely overlook, yet it changes everything. Another powerful reason an avoidant person develops a lasting emotional connection is simple consistency. It may sound ordinary, but for someone with an avoidant attachment style, consistency carries enormous emotional weight. This does not mean you should ignore unhealthy behavior or accept poor treatment just to remain in their life. Healthy boundaries still matter, and mutual respect is always essential. What it does mean is that avoidant people often become attached to those who remain dependable, emotionally steady, and reliable over a long period of time. They usually feel more comfortable in relationships that are stable instead of constantly breaking apart and coming back together. Emotional predictability creates a feeling of security that many avoidant individuals quietly crave, even if they rarely admit it out loud. When they experience someone who consistently shows kindness without unnecessary drama, that person slowly becomes part of their emotional safe place. Once they truly decide that someone belongs in their world, letting go is not something they do casually. The same pattern often appears in many other parts of their lives. They tend to spend extra time thinking through important decisions because they carefully weigh every possibility before making a commitment. Whether they are choosing a place to live, purchasing a vehicle, or making another major life decision, they usually move slowly until they feel certain. But once that decision has been made, they often remain committed instead of constantly searching for something better. Relationships frequently follow that exact same rhythm. Their emotional investment may take longer than expected, but when it finally happens, it often becomes stronger than people realize. The person who patiently respected their pace, remained dependable, and created emotional stability often becomes someone they truly do not want to lose. Keep watching, because the next quality reveals why some relationships grow stronger while others quietly fall apart. Another characteristic that builds a deep emotional connection with an avoidant person is genuine self-awareness. They are naturally drawn toward people who can honestly recognize their own actions instead of placing all the blame on someone else whenever problems appear. Imagine someone realizing that sending repeated messages while the other person is working creates unnecessary pressure. Instead of becoming defensive, they calmly acknowledge it and make an effort to improve. That simple act communicates something much bigger than words alone. It shows emotional maturity. It tells the avoidant person that both people are willing to grow together rather than expecting only one partner to change. This kind of personal responsibility feels incredibly reassuring because it removes the feeling of constant criticism or emotional pressure. Rather than believing they must carry every problem alone, they begin to see the relationship as a genuine partnership where both people are committed to learning, improving, and supporting each other. Over time, this creates trust that feels steady instead of forced. Their emotional walls begin to lower naturally because they no longer feel trapped in a cycle of blame or defensiveness. They start believing that mistakes can be discussed without threatening the relationship itself. That quiet confidence often becomes one of the strongest foundations for lasting emotional closeness. And there is one more important behavior that strengthens this bond even further. So make sure you stay until the end because it may completely change the way you understand avoidant attachment. Another habit that helps an avoidant person build a deeper emotional connection is when both people are willing to offer a sincere apology after making a mistake. A healthy apology is never about keeping score or proving who apologized first. It is about taking responsibility, showing empathy, and respecting the other person's emotional experience. When an avoidant individual hears a genuine apology that clearly recognizes how a specific action affected them, their emotional walls often begin to soften. They become more comfortable admitting their own mistakes because the relationship starts to feel emotionally safe instead of emotionally threatening. Many avoidant people hesitate to fully open their hearts because they quietly worry that their feelings or needs will never truly matter. A thoughtful apology sends a different message. It tells them their emotions are important, their experience is being heard, and the relationship values both people equally. That simple moment strengthens trust, builds emotional closeness, encourages greater vulnerability, and often inspires them to become more honest, accountable, and emotionally available themselves. They no longer feel like they have to protect themselves every second. Instead, they slowly begin to believe that mistakes can be repaired instead of becoming reasons to pull away. That shift may seem small from the outside, but for an avoidant person, it can completely change how safe the relationship feels. Keep watching, because the next behavior is one of the biggest reasons some avoidant relationships quietly grow stronger, while others slowly fall apart. Another important quality that strengthens an avoidant person's emotional bond is staying calm when things do not unfold exactly as you hoped. Picture two people who simply have different emotional needs. One partner feels happiest spending time together every other day because regular closeness brings comfort and security. The avoidant partner, however, may honestly feel capable of meeting only once a week because of work, personal responsibilities, or simply needing extra time alone to recharge emotionally. Neither need is automatically right or wrong, they are simply different. If the avoidant says, "I care about you, but this is honestly all I can manage right now," they are usually sharing a real emotional limit instead of rejecting the relationship. For many avoidant individuals, even admitting those limits feels uncomfortable because they fear disappointing someone they genuinely care about. The response they receive often shapes everything that happens next. If honesty is met with criticism, guilt, accusations, or emotional pressure, they may begin connecting vulnerability with conflict. Comments that attack their character, dismiss their feelings, or suggest something is wrong with them usually strengthen their instinct to withdraw and protect themselves. But a calm and understanding response creates a completely different experience. Imagine hearing, "I'm disappointed because I hoped we'd spend more time together, but I appreciate your honesty. Let's work with what we have for now and talk again later." In that moment, the avoidant no longer feels trapped or cornered. They feel accepted even with their current limitations. That feeling of acceptance often lowers emotional defenses and naturally increases their willingness to invest more when they honestly become ready. Stay until the end, because one final pattern explains why emotional peace becomes so valuable to an avoidant person. Another quality that many avoidant individuals quietly treasure is a relationship where peace consistently matters more than emotional chaos. This does not mean avoiding important conversations or pretending problems do not exist. Healthy relationships require honesty, and difficult subjects still deserve attention. The difference lies in how those conversations are handled. Avoidant people often feel safest with someone who can raise concerns without allowing every disagreement to become emotionally explosive. When both partners recognize that emotions are becoming too intense, it is often healthier to pause, take a breath, regain perspective, and return to the discussion later with clearer minds. Choosing to protect the relationship instead of trying to win every argument reflects emotional maturity. It reminds both people that they are working together rather than fighting against each other. This approach has a powerful effect on an avoidant person's sense of emotional security. They deeply appreciate hearing something like, "We've both shared how we feel, and we don't have to solve everything tonight. Let's take a break, enjoy our time together, and come back to this when we're both feeling calmer." Words like these tell them that the relationship is not falling apart simply because a disagreement exists. Instead of feeling pressured to fix everything immediately, they are given the space they need to process their emotions without fearing rejection or abandonment. Ironically, this calm approach often makes avoidant individuals much more willing to return to difficult conversations later because those discussions no longer feel overwhelming. Over time, that steady feeling of emotional safety becomes one of the strongest foundations for lasting trust, deeper connection, and genuine commitment. And what happens after that often surprises people even more, because the strongest sign of real attachment is usually much quieter than anyone expects. This kind of emotional safety becomes one of the strongest foundations for lasting attachment and long-term commitment. The final quality is something many avoidant individuals do not fully realize they need until they experience it in a healthy relationship. It is having a partner who can handle small, everyday mistakes without turning every slip into a major emotional crisis. Most people value this kind of patience, but for an avoidant person, it can feel especially comforting and healing. Knowing they can make a small mistake, admit it honestly, and correct it without being harshly criticized creates a powerful sense of security. Instead of constantly worrying about being judged or feeling pressured to be perfect, they slowly begin to relax. They stop believing that every mistake puts the relationship at risk. That freedom makes honesty much easier because admitting an error no longer feels more dangerous than hiding it. As trust grows, emotional closeness becomes easier to develop. Imagine a couple agreeing that one partner can spend Saturday evening with friends, but should return home around 1 in the morning because they have important responsibilities the next day. Maybe they have children to care for, an early flight, or plans that require both people to be rested. Instead, the avoidant partner loses track of time and arrives home around 2. The next morning, they openly admit what happened and acknowledge they stayed out later than planned. It is still a mistake, but it is a human one. Stay with me, because the response that follows often determines whether trust grows stronger or quietly begins to fade. At that moment, the other partner has an important choice. They can react with accusations, harsh assumptions, and emotional escalation, or they can address the situation honestly while still showing respect and understanding. A balanced response might sound like this: "Thank you for telling me the truth. I appreciate your honesty. I asked you to come home earlier because we had important plans today, and now we'll probably need to adjust our schedule. Next time, I'd really like you to keep that commitment because it mattered to both of us." Notice what is happening here. The mistake is not being ignored, and personal needs are not being pushed aside. Instead, disappointment is expressed calmly while still making room for accountability, repair, and mutual respect instead of punishment. That combination carries enormous emotional value for an avoidant person. They begin learning that conflict does not automatically lead to rejection, and that mistakes can be discussed without creating an emotionally unsafe atmosphere filled with shame or personal attacks. Over time, this teaches them that honesty is safer than hiding, and openness is safer than emotional distance. These small experiences slowly reshape how they view relationships. Keep watching, because one overlooked truth explains why these everyday moments matter far more than grand romantic gestures. In the end, avoidant individuals often build their deepest emotional connections with people who remain true to themselves while also offering patience, understanding, and emotional steadiness. Accepting small mistakes does not mean tolerating repeated disrespect or pretending problems do not exist. It simply means responding in proportion instead of turning every imperfect moment into a crisis. When this quality is combined with accepting differences, building consistency over time, practicing self-awareness, offering sincere apologies, responding calmly during stressful moments, and choosing peace over constant emotional conflict, the relationship becomes a place where genuine trust can slowly grow. These repeated experiences gradually lower an avoidant person's emotional defenses and make lasting commitment feel much safer than it once did. If your goal is to build a stronger relationship, repair a struggling marriage, or create a healthier emotional connection, these qualities provide the kind of foundation where both people can grow together. One truth that often goes unnoticed is that emotional safety is rarely created by one dramatic event. It is built through hundreds of ordinary moments that quietly teach each partner what they can expect from the other. Every patient response, every calm conversation, every act of understanding adds another layer of trust. Avoidant individuals notice these moments, even if they never mention them. They quietly observe whether honesty will be met with respect or punishment. And little by little, those experiences begin changing everything. Another important truth is that emotional trust is not built because someone never makes mistakes. It grows because both people discover that mistakes can be repaired without threatening the relationship itself. Every healthy relationship includes misunderstandings, forgotten promises, poor decisions, and moments when one person unintentionally disappoints the other. The real difference is never whether those moments happen. The difference is how they are handled afterward. When accountability is combined with compassion, both partners feel respected rather than controlled. For an avoidant person, this creates a completely different emotional experience from what they may have known earlier in life. Instead of expecting every mistake to bring rejection, criticism, or emotional pressure, they begin believing that difficult moments can become opportunities for understanding, healing, and growth. That belief makes vulnerability feel much less frightening and allows emotional closeness to last much longer. Many avoidant individuals also need extra time to process their emotions before they fully understand what they are feeling. While some people naturally think out loud, avoidant individuals often process everything quietly inside their own minds first. They may not always have an immediate answer during emotional conversations, but that does not mean they do not care. In many cases, they simply need space to understand their emotions before they can clearly express them. Giving them that space while keeping communication open and respectful often becomes one of the final pieces that allows deep emotional trust to flourish. And once that trust finally takes root, the connection often becomes far stronger than most people ever expect.